So She-Hulk just wrapped up its 9-episode run as one of the most talked about superhero shows to come out in quite some time. With its frequent fourth wall breaks, focus on the struggles of women, and knowing when to make fun of the MCU, I think it's safe to say overall it was a pretty fun show. Much like the comics, this show is a quirkier corner of the MCU that pulls from a multitude of obscure characters to deliver stories that you normally wouldn't get in an Avengers movie.
What up y'all, it's Patrice with ScreenRant again, and let's take a look at 20 things you might have missed in She-Hulk.
The show begins with, as you'd expect, She-Hulk's origin. Jennifer Walters comes into contact with Bruce Banner's blood and becomes She-Hulk. Simple, right? Well, in the comics, Jen and her cousin Bruce Banner were catching up before Jen gets shot in the back by a local mobster, which is much more dramatic, and he decides to give her a blood transfusion in order to save her life, granting her Hulk powers. The show does things a little differently. Jen and Bruce are catching up, but they get run off the road by a mysterious spaceship. Jen and Bruce both get injured in the crash, and Jen gets Bruce's blood in her while trying to save him from the car wreck. This is a deliberate change to the origin to give Jen more agency in her own show, and I think it fits pretty well.
Plus she gets to beat up some misogynist goons right after, and we can all get behind that. I hope.
If you pay close attention in episode 2, you'll catch a glimpse of Jennifer's lock screen, which is something I'm sure is very common amongst fans, a picture of Captain America. Specifically, it's him in his battle damage outfit from Avengers Age of Ultron. You can tell by the handy belt pouches. Not quite sure who took this picture or where they even took it. I feel like Tony might have been able to do it on the fly with the cameras in his suit, but considering how he and Steve's relationship was strained in that movie, it seems kinda unlikely. I also feel like his suit was advanced enough that it didn't need to take pictures with the flash on. Maybe it was one of the survivors of Sokovia. Who knows?
At least we get another glimpse at America's ass. Ant-Man was spitting with that line.
Remember the Dark Elves from Thor 2? Of course not. Nobody does. And if you do, you may be entitled to financial compensation for emotional damages. Most people only know what happened in that movie because of Asgard's best comedy troupe, but they were there, and Dark Elves imply the existence of Light Elves. Thor even mentioned their homeland of Alfheim in his debut movie, although we've never seen its realm or its citizens. Until now. Episode 3 of She-Hulk focuses on Runa, a Light Elf that's been causing quite a bit of mischief, impersonating a lawyer, a judge, and even Megan Thee Stallion. Oddly enough, there's also an Asgardian character named Runa in the comics, debuting in 2021's King in Black, Return of the Valkyries #1, as one of the original 9 Valkyries. These characters are likely unrelated, but it might be cool to reveal that the Runa that we met in She-Hulk had disguised herself as a Valkyrie back when they were at the height of their power. That might be a bit too much of a deep cut for the MCU, but we did have Ben Kingsley return as Trevor in Shang-Chi, so anything's possible.
Speaking of Megan Thee Stallion, she's one of several interesting entries in Jen's itinerary. In episode 4, we see a reminder to research precedents on IP likeness for Miss Pete, which is Megan Thee Stallion's real last name.
But that's not all. She also got case notes for Kraft v. Soul and Lee v. Byrne, all of which are people who have had their hands in She-Hulk's history. David Anthony Kraft penned all but a single issue of Jen's solo series, The Savage She-Hulk, and Charles Soule wrote a brief run in 2014. Stan Lee, as we all know, is the co-creator of a lot of Marvel characters, but also She-Hulk, and wrote her debut issue, while John Byrne wrote the seminal run of the character, introducing her ability to break the fourth wall. I guess the second case can be read as an argument of who actually created the character, the one who introduced them or the one who defined them. Even if you haven't watched the show, you've likely seen two things from it. Gifs of She-Hulk clapping with her hands, and gifs of her clapping without her hands. But we're gonna focus on the first one for today. A signature move of the Incredible Hulk is the Thunderclap, in which he claps his hands together so hard, he can produce shockwaves that can level cities. Although if you're only familiar with Marvel through the MCU, you might not even know he could do that. After all, the last time we saw Bruce perform his signature move was in 2008's Incredible Hulk, which most MCU enjoyers have largely forgotten. Speaking of the 2008 Hulk, remember when Edward Norton played Bruce Banner? It's kind of impossible to imagine him playing the character in the movies that followed. Mark Ruffalo's performance cemented him as the definitive version of the Green Meanie for Minnie, and fans basically ignored the trailer for the first movie until the trailer for She-Hulk showed that Tim Roth would be reprising his role as the Abomination. People initially thought that he'd be the main villain of the show, resulting in a rematch with Bruce Banner.
But as Bruce points out, there's no need for them to fight anymore because they're completely different people now, which is a great nod to the character's progression and also a sly nod to Bruce's recasting.
The law firm She-Hulk joins is named GLK&H, which stands for Goodman, Leiber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway. Holden Holloway is the only co-founder of the law firm present in the show, and is the only one that realistically could be, as the other three are dead. Sorry for getting unexpectedly morbid there, but we have to keep it real. Anyway, Martin Goodman was the founder and the original publisher of Timely Comics, which would later become Marvel Comics in 1939. Leiber and Kurtzberg refer to Stanley Leiber and Jacob Kurtzberg, aka Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, the co-creators of the Marvel Universe. Remember Donny Blaze? You know, the inept stage magician whose name sounds suspiciously like Johnny Blaze, aka Ghost Rider. The guy who specialized in fire magic and accidentally led a swarm of demons from a hell dimension into an LA theater? That guy? It's like the writers knew the audience were hungry for cameos, so they named him that to screw with us. Fans were so busy wondering if he was going to introduce Mephisto into the MCU that they didn't even notice the beak-shaped necklace atop his admittedly chiseled physique. That's right, that's Khonshu's head, the Egyptian god of death that got poor Oscar Isaac under his bony thumb.
Does this mean that Donny Blaze is also a follower of Khonshu? Or does he just think it looks cool and is too stupid to understand its implications? Yeah, he's probably just stupid.
After realizing Jen can turn into an emotionally charged rage monster, Bruce does what any loving family member would do. Tosses her into a buzzsaw-filled suicide booth straight out of Futurama to trigger her powers. Jen, understandably so, isn't into this and suggests that if he wants to trigger an emotional response, he should have just turned on a Pixar movie instead. She specifically mentions the one scene from Inside Out that left everyone's emotions battered and bruised. No, I won't specify what, because I know you don't want to be seen crying in public. But this Pixar shout-out is more than brand synergy. It's thematic synergy. Both She-Hulk and Inside Out revolve around female leads who in varying ways struggle with their intense personified emotions. Thankfully, only Jen had to deal with her emotional state physically manifested. I can only imagine what it'd be like if Riley's rage caused her to literally start burning down her house. As we've made clear, She-Hulk Attorney at Law is no stranger to paying homage to his roots. But the show's foundation isn't solely rooted in the comics. Episode 2, Superhuman Law, finds our hero grabbing a drink at a local lawyer bar, Legal Ease. Like most theme bars, this establishment doesn't shy away from playing TV shows that match the theme. And what could be airing but an episode of the 1990s comedy drama, Ally McBeal. If you're not familiar, Ally McBeal was centered around the life of a Boston-based lawyer and her complicated personal and professional life, contrasting courtroom drama with colorful fantasy sequences, including one time where she danced with a CGI baby which served as a manifestation for her ticking biological clock. Yeah, it's pretty clear to see where the parallels between the two shows lie. And series pilot director Kat Coiro noted that she intended She-Hulk to share a vibe with Ally McBeal. Longtime Hulk readers may have jumped out of their seats when it was revealed that a dark web organization called Un-Intelligencia had been organizing a hate campaign against She-Hulk. In the comics, Un-Intelligencia is a ring of evil super geniuses consisting of the leader Dr. Doom, the Mad Thinker, and MODOK among others. Think of it as the Illuminati but composed of villains. Intelligencia sought after lost arcane knowledge from all over the Marvel universe, like secrets of the Library of Alexandria hidden in Wakanda, Atlantis, and the Eternal City of Olympia. Considering the MCU's Intelligencia doesn't have the ability to access the negative zone, we can probably assume they won't be involved in the multiverse saga. Although, considering Red Hulk is supposed to show up in the Thunderbolts, they could get a shout out as they had a hand in that character's creation in the comics. At the end of episode 8, Jen ponders what could possibly go wrong in the upcoming series finale. One of her questions to the audience is if a red She-Hulk is gonna show up and be the season's final boss. The prospect sounds pretty absurd, but it's not outside the realm of possibility for a future season. Betty Ross, the daughter of General Thunderbolt Ross, and the love interest of Bruce Banner, was dying of radiation sickness as a result of her prolonged exposure to the Hulk. The Abomination became aware of this development and used his own blood to poison Betty, ultimately killing her. General Ross would then put her into cyrogenetic stasis, only for her to be resurrected by MODOK, using the same treatment that made her father the Red Hulk, resulting in her becoming Red She-Hulk. This wasn't even the first time MODOK had experimented on her. Back in the 70s, he exposed her to gamma radiation, turning her into the Harpy. So yeah, there's a long way to go until this titanic clash, but it'll be worth the wait. Turns out the Intelligencia did actually manage to dig up some interesting information. On their website, you can see an article in the sidebar highlighting travel destinations. Under the headline, you can see a map of Cookeville, Tennessee. This is one of several locations that Sylvie, the woman variant of our beloved Loki, bombed in that show's second episode. Definitely not a great place to visit now, but considering Intelligencia's obsessive hatred for women superheroes, one of the incels in the finale mentioned how there's now a woman Thor. Also, these are probably the same people who would unironically say MCU. Maybe they were looking for evidence to start another hate campaign. Somehow I don't think messing with Sylvie is going to end well. And now I want to watch Loki again. Season 2 needs to hurry it up. Todd being the leader of Intelligencia fit perfectly. He's a wimpy billionaire who can't get a date and more than likely invest in cryptocurrency and NFTs. But the big tell that he was truly villainous is when we learn that he acquired a Wakandan spear while studying abroad. Okay, I can buy that Wakanda kept its borders open during the blip, as T'Challa wanted them to open up prior to that. But I find it really hard to believe they just let tourists take vibranium out of the country, let alone weaponized vibranium. He definitely stole that, or bought it in an online auction. If it's the latter, he should totally have returned it to his rightful home.
I'm just saying, if Killmonger was still around, he would have broken into his house and She-Hulk would have needed to find a new villain. And to be honest, I wouldn't think much of it this time around. Act like a colonizer, get treated like a colonizer.
Matt Murdock's back, baby. Daredevil fans have been thirsting for news on his proper return to the MCU ever since he showed up in No Way Home, and She-Hulk was the perfect show to give him his first proper appearance in a post-Marvel Netflix world, giving us the most comics accurate take on Daredevil to date. How can this be proven in the court of law? Your Honor, he f***s. Yeah, for a guy who doesn't typically kill, Matt Murdock has one of the biggest body counts in the Marvel universe. Exhibit A, Jen's reaction the very next day. I really do hope they become an actual couple later down the line. But onto some more serious news. Matt mentions in court that the Sokovia Accords have been officially repealed since the blip. Considering they were established before half of all life was wiped out, it makes some degree of sense that those in power would come to accept the increasingly rapid influx of enhanced individuals. The world is changing, and that's just something they have to accept. Although once the X-Men start showing up, things might change. Ever since Marvel got their action figures back from Fox, it's only been a matter of time before the X-Men make their MCU debut. Until recently, it was a fair bet that the MCU's first mutant would be Namor, making their debut in Wakanda Forever. Oddly enough, the moment they dropped the M-word in Ms. Marvel was the second time the MCU has paid homage to the classic X-Men theme, the first time being in Doctor Strange 2. But nobody has even mentioned the name until now. The finale of She-Hulk got delightfully meta, bringing Jen out of her show directly into the Marvel Studios documentary Avengers Assemble, where she spoke directly to the leader of Marvel Studios, Kevin. No, not Kevin Feige like we probably all thought. Kevin, an AI that plans the future of the MCU. So she takes that chance to ask when the X-Men are showing up, but doesn't get an answer. It's alright, Jen, none of us are getting an answer until after Secret Wars. To keep the mutant train rolling, the season finale wasn't the first hint at mutant activity within the show. During episode 2, we see several blink and you'll miss it internet headlines on Jen's computer, between ads for Iron Man themed sneakers and an article about a celestial corpse sticking out of the ocean. Yay, the MCU hasn't completely ignored the Eternals. We see the headline, Man Fights with Metal Claws and Bar Brawl. You know what this means, I know what this means, Ryan Reynolds knows what this means. Hugh Jackman is Hugh Backman, baby! Woo! One of the most charming parts of this show is the recurring in-credits illustrations by Kagan McLeod. They practically sum up the show itself, to the point where an animated She-Hulk series in this style would be incredible. No pun intended. One of the best slides had to be of everyone's favorite himbo, Pug, and his extravagant collection of super shoes. The end credits of episode 5 shows off his collection, and it looks like he's gotten over 60 pairs of shoes. And they're all themed after various Marvel superheroes like Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange, Hawkeye, Black Panther, and Moon Knight. Pug's got shoes based on heroes that aren't even in the MCU yet, like several X-Men, Namor, and an orange rocky pair of sneakers clearly meant to represent the Thing of the Fantastic Four. Now those definitely make sense, as the Fantastic Four are known to merchandise themselves to help fund their science projects. While Jen negotiates with Kevin about how to make the finale less of a cluster crap, he requests that she depower herself between shots. This way they save some money on the VFX budget, as the team is already hard at work on Wakanda Forever. You know, while I'm sure this is meant to be a dig at how people derided the first movie for having some unfinished effects, it's hard to laugh at it when you consider how hard the VFX teams are crunched. Maybe this meta joke was better left out. Coming back to Jen's concerns about where this show's finale is going, she questions aloud, am I getting fridged? The term fridged may fly over your head if you're not into comics, but it's a catch-all term that refers to how women have been continually mistreated in comics. It calls back specifically to 1994's Green Lantern number 54, where Green Lantern's girlfriend, Alex DeWitt, is shoved into a refrigerator by the classic 90s villain Major Force. It was with the release of this issue that comic book fan Gail Simone recognized the disturbing trend of female characters in comics being maimed, killed, or depowered, often for the sole purpose of furthering a man's storyline. Thus she coined the term women in refrigerators and established a website of the same name in 1999, cataloging every fridge female in comics up to that point. Gail Simone went on to be a critically acclaimed writer and beloved Twitter troll, writing runs of Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman, and even Deadpool. Marvel, give this woman a She-Hulk run already. There were way too many Easter eggs to go over in a single video. If we really wanted to go all out, I'm sure we could have made a video like this for every single episode.
Anyway, how do you guys feel about She-Hulk? It's no question that the show has been pretty divisive for a number of reasons, but as the MCU's first sitcom, I thought it was pretty fun. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.